Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the world of home tech with me, your host Paul Hibbert, and welcome to the most exciting thing ever. You might remember I did a Kodi Alexa tutorial quite some time ago, but since then Joe Ipson has made his code way more amazing, and now way much faster, and so all of the installation has changed, so I have redone my tutorial and it is totally worth it. Alexa, ask Kodi to show recently added TV. Go down. Go down. Select. Alexa, ask Kodi to stop.
Playback stopped.
God, that is so fast, it's ridiculous. That's not all it can do. It can do all of this stuff. Like, pretty much anything you can think of. It can play, like, recently added episodes. It can play the next available episode of blah. You can say, play movie Star Wars Rogue One, and it will play it. It is phenomenal. Here's how! This is not the first time I've made this tutorial. Amazon ruined it for me last time by changing everything, and now I'm doing it again, so I'm not looking forward to this at all because it took forever last time. So the first thing we're going to do is stop moaning and open Kodi. In Kodi, we're going to go to the Settings button, and then Service Settings, and what we're going to do is we're going to tell Kodi if someone on the internet asks you to do something, do it. The port number is like an instruction for your router. So your router is helping lots of computers in your house connect to the internet. Your mobile phone, your Fire TV stick, your PC, whatever. And what we're saying is if a request comes through from the outside world with the instruction port 2341, we want it to come to Kodi. Kodi will only respond if it knows to respond on that port number. So I'm going to say port 2341. You should do the same. Otherwise, later on, you might get upset when my instructions get complicated and you can't follow them anymore. Do the same thing for username. Kodi is a good username. Pick it. Get your own damn password, though. So I'm going to pick my password. You should pick your own. But don't forget it. You'll need it later. That is Kodi set up to answer requests from the outside world that came through on ports 2341 that have this username and password with them. If anyone else comes through and don't have this username and password, tell them to bugger off. That's Kodi set up. So the next thing we need to do is tell our router if a request comes through on port 2341, send it to the computer that has Kodi on it. So for you, it might be your Fire Stick. For me, it is this PC. So I'm going to ask this PC, what is the address of my router so that I can visit that address to make changes to my router. And the way in which we do that is we type in ipconfig into a command prompt window and press enter. And the information I've got here is the default gateway, which is my router, is 192.168.0.1. And this computer that I'm on right now, because that's the thing I did the request from, is 192.168.0.13. If you're using your Fire Stick and you want to know what its IP address is, you'll have to go into your Fire Stick settings and find out. But what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to open up a browser window, and I'm going to visit 192.168.0.1. because that is the address of my router and I want to make changes to my router. So what's happening now is my computer here in my music room is going down the cables to the router sat in my living room, and the router has responded and said, what's the password to get into me? And I'm going to give it my password. The router says that is correct and lets me in, and now I can go to advanced settings. Your router might look different from this. You will have a different router to me possibly, but the principles are all the same. I'm going to go into port forwarding, and you'll have something very similar, probably hopefully called port forwarding, because that's what we're doing is we're forwarding ports, and we need to create a rule. I can call this rule Kodi music room, because that's where the Kodi instance is that I'm going to send all the traffic to. And we need to tell it the port is 2341, for both start and end. You might only have one box, it might just be called port number, but it's 2341 because that is our port number in Kodi. That's what Kodi is going to respond on. So any requests from the outside world for 2341 should be sent to this PC here, this PC that has Kodi on it. And that IP address, we found out, was 192.168.0.13. So again, if this is your Fire Stick, then you're putting in your Fire Stick's IP address. 0.13 it is for me, add rule. And you can see my rule is there, Kodi 2341 points at that IP address, which is this PC. So we can test that theory works. So if we visit whatismyip.com, this website tells you what the IP address is of your router downstairs for me in my living room, but from the outside world. So the outside world knows to talk to my router via this number here. This is like your postal address for your router. So I now know that that is my IP address. So if I try to visit that IP address, and I could do this from any computer in the world, I could do this from your computer. If I visit that IP on port number 2341, my router now knows to send that request, because it's coming from the internet, to my router, and then my router goes, 2341 belongs to that computer in Paul's music room. And Paul's computer should respond, because we told Kodi, respond on 2341. And so if I now visit that address, it responds. I am already logged in. What will happen for you is it will give you a username and password screen, because we told it there needs to be a username and password. And if you put in your Kodi username and password, you'll get a screen that looks like this that contains all of your TV shows. And here we can click on them and press play in my browser. Guess what happens? It starts playing in Kodi. Because that's what we're doing. We're setting up the outside world to be able to control our Kodi device. And that is what we have just done. So this is where it just gets a little bit more complicated, potentially, if it wasn't complicated enough for you. So I have what is called a static IP address from my internet service provider. Every time I connect to the internet, my router is given the same IP address by my broadband supplier. That means that when I create my Alexa skill and I tell the Alexa skill, point at this IP address so that all the traffic for my Alexa comes to my router, everything works great. If your ISP keeps giving you a different IP address every time you reconnect to the internet because, I don't know, they're d***s, you're going to be in trouble because your Alexa skill is going to be pointing at an IP address that no longer exists, or, more importantly, no longer belongs to you, it belongs to somebody else. That is where a company called Dynu comes in. You've got two choices. You can either go to your ISP and say, hey man, I want a static IP address. And they will say, hey man, that'll cost you this much a month. Probably. Or you can use a free account from Dynu. And what Dynu is a company that gives you a static address, which will be a name like paul.dynu.com or whatever. And that paul.dynu.com will frequently be updated with my new IP address, because Dynu will keep asking my router, hey, what's the IP address now? And my router will go, actually, it's changed. It's this. But the name that Dynu gives me will always stay the same. It will always be paul.dynu.com. And all you need to do is create a free account with them and set up free DDNS, and you can then get your router configured to automatically tell Dynu whenever your IP address changes. That is as complicated as it gets. I'm not going to tell you how to set this up. There are loads of guides out on the internet, and I don't have time. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a bucket. That's my Midlands accent there for you, bucket. The bucket is the thing that holds all the data that allows Alexa to communicate with Kodi. So we're going to be uploading a load of information to this place. So the place has to exist on the internet for us to do it, and we're going to use Amazon's place, which is at aws.amazon.com. So this is their developer area where developers make Alexa stuff happen. When it asks you if you want a personal or a company account, you want a personal account. And if it asks you if you plan to sell your skills, the answer is absolutely not. And I recommend you sign up for a basic account. If you do anything other than those things, you'll probably get charged actual money, and you don't want that. So sign up for a basic account, and I shall see you in a moment. I'll wait. I won't really wait, that would be a boring video. Pause this video and sign up. So I'm going to sign into the console now. And this is AWS. This is the place where we can create ourselves a bucket where we can put some stuff. So we need to create the bucket before we do anything else. So we're going to head over to IAM so we can create a user. So Alexa is essentially a user of the service. So we're going to create a user. So we need to go into the Users tab and click Add User. The username can be anything you want, so I'm going to call it Kodi. Makes sense, I guess, because that's what we're creating it for. We want programmatic access, and then click Next Permissions. Next, you need to click on Attach Existing Policies Directly, and then find Administrator Access, which I've got here, and tick that box. Then scroll down and click Next Review. You should get something that looks like this, and then you can click on Create User. So super important, you're going to need this in a bit. So take your Access ID and put it in a notepad file. That is my access key ID. You'll then need to click the Show button on Secret Access Key. It's already highlighted. I'm going to copy that and put that in my clipboard as well and say Secret Key. And paste it in there. And you can now close this window. You've actually created your bucket, and that's all you need. So if AWS is the bucket that contains our stuff, and we need to get our stuff to the bucket, then Python is the car that is going to drive our stuff to that bucket. That's a weird analogy, but never mind. So you need to go to python.org/downloads. Link is in the description if you want it. And you need to download Python 2.7.14 and install it. That is Python installed on our machine now. So next up, we need to download the code that we're actually going to upload to the bucket. So we've got a bucket, we've got a way to get to that bucket, and now we're going to get to the actual things we're going to put in the bucket when we get there. So if you visit this address, which is in my description, it'll take you to the brilliant Joe Ipson's code. I am not the guy that made this, so in case it's not already obvious, I'm not that clever. Joe Ipson is that clever, he made this code. All credit to him. If we then open this up, so show in folder, what I'm going to do is create myself a little folder on my desktop called Kodi Alexa, so I can remember where it is. And I'm going to take Joe's code, I'm going to cut it from here, I'm going to put it in my folder on my desktop, and then I'm going to extract it here. So you'll need WinZip or WinRAR or something so you can extract those files. And you can see I've now got a folder of things that I'm going to put in my bucket. So I don't need that anymore, I'm going to get rid of it, because all I need is the files that I'm going to put in my bucket. Okay, so if Python is our car, we need to now put some wheels on our car and put an engine in our car so we can drive our car to our bucket to put our stuff in our bucket. This is a dreadful analogy. I've just realized. So I'm going to open up the command prompt window again, and all we're going to actually do is start sticking in lines of code that I don't understand. Those lines of code are in my video description, and all you've got to do is copy and paste them in exactly the same way as I do. So the first one I'm going to put in is that one, and I'm going to press enter. So what we're looking for is any errors. If you find any errors, you'll need to Google them, because I have no idea what anything is that we're doing. So don't ask me for help, just Google for any errors you find. And worst comes to worst, just uninstall and reinstall Python and delete Joe's code from your computer and reload Joe's code from your computer. So I'm now going to paste in the next line of code and press enter. And is asking me for stuff now. So the first stuff it wants to know is my access key, which is that one there. So I'm going to paste that one in. And you'll find you can't right-click in this box. You can only right-click at the top now and go edit and paste. And that's just because we're in like a different section of the command prompt. So I've pasted in my access key. I'm going to press enter. And it wants to now know the secret key. So I'm going to paste in the secret key in the same way. Edit and then paste. And then enter. It wants the default region name. If you're in the EU, it will be this one. If you're in the US, it will be this one. I think I'm still in the EU. Who knows? Brexit has ruined everything. I am in the UK, so I am in the EU, so I'm going to paste that in. Edit, paste, enter. It wants a default output format. I'm not going to give it one. I'm going to leave it empty and press enter. Final line of code then, before we go and do something else, is that one there, and then press enter. And then we're just going to switch directories. So if you put in CD and then a space, and then you need the location where you have put the files. So that for me is that. So I'm going to copy that location. So CD space, and then paste that location in and press enter. And then we're just going to minimize this window for now. So we're done with the command prompt for a moment, but don't get rid of it because we'll need it again shortly. And what we're going to do is visit this address here. So if you go to that address, you'll find you've just got a whole load of code here. And we need to just copy this code to our clipboard and put it into a like an editor. So I've got Notepad++ for doing my editing. You can use whatever you want. This is free though, so if you want to download Notepad++, do it now. And we're going to paste Joe's code into Notepad++ from line 1, top to bottom. And all we need to do is change some of the stuff in Joe's code to actually be our stuff instead of his or whoever's. So first of all, the IP address needs to be the IP address of my router. Or your router, in fact, if it's you doing it. So I'm going to put in my IP address. My IP address, if you remember I was saying earlier on, is static. It never changes. If yours changes, if you have a dynamic address, you'll need to put in your dyno address here. It needs to be something that never changes, otherwise this skill will stop working very quickly. It'll work at first, and then a week later it will stop when you reconnect to the internet. So dyno address in there if you don't have a static IP. Port number is 2341 because that's the one that we chose in Kodi. 2341. Username was Kodi with a capital K because that's what I chose in Kodi. And password is my password. Your password will be what you'll put in here. Not my password, your password. We're then going to save this file. So if you go File and then Save As, you want to find the location where you have all of those files stored. So for me, it was in a folder called Kodi Alexa on my desktop. And then this is where we downloaded all those files to, and you just need to call it kodi.config, and then change the save as type to be all types, and then press save. So that folder now has a Kodi config file in it that contains all our personal details. And what we're now going to do is go back to our command prompt window so we can push all of the information from this folder to the AWS server. But first we have to put some wheels on our car. So we're going to put a whole bunch more code into the command line window. So next bit of code is that one. Again, all of this in my video description. Press enter. And you can see something changed here because it's starting to shuffle stuff around and add stuff to stuff. And then the next line of code I'm going to paste in is that one, and then I'm going to press enter. And then I'm going to paste this line of code and press enter. And then the next line of code, paste, and then enter. And then another line of code, pip install Zapper, press enter. And if you've understood any of this so far, then you're some kind of a savant genius. But I do kind of get what we're doing now. This final line of code is telling Zapper, which is the software we've just installed by doing all that stuff, to now finally deploy everything that's in this folder up to the AWS server. So Zapper space init, press enter. And all we do is we accept the defaults for everything. So I'm just going to keep pressing enter for everything it asks me. And I just totally lied to you because that hasn't uploaded anything. It's just asked you a bunch of questions that we've said yes to. It's now going to deploy it with this, Zapper deploy dev, enter. So again, any error messages at this point, I would probably just start over. You just need to uninstall Python and get rid of all of the Kodi Alexa stuff, and then reinstall Python and put his stuff back in and start from the beginning of doing the whole command prompt stuff. But that looks to me to have been successful. It's given me an address here. I need to click the mark button, so right click and then mark, and then highlight this address, and then press enter on your keyboard and it will copy it to your clipboard, and we can now paste this underneath all of our other stuff. Because this address is going to be used shortly. And then one last line of code to run is this one. So I'm going to paste that in and press enter. And this is just querying a bunch of stuff that it's going to need later on. So keep this window open for now. and we can finally create the Alexa skill. So next up, we're going to visit this address here, developer.amazon.com, and we're going to sign in. If you haven't signed up already, you will need to, and again, if it asks you if you are a business user or a residential user, or if you plan to publish a skill, any of those things, you want to be very basic, very non-businessy, and you're not going to sell it to anyone, you promise. Sign in. You'll need to use the same username and password whether you're using AWS or the developer portal or your Alexa unit. So use your normal Amazon user details. And we're going to go to Alexa, and then Alexa Skills Kit, Get Started, Alexa Skills Kit. Start a skill. In language, pick whatever language you want. I'm in the UK, so I'm going to pick UK, and the name of the skill is Kodi. You can call it whatever you want, but that's what you should call it, in my opinion. Invocation name, again, I'm going to use Kodi, this time in lowercase letters because it won't accept capitals. And again, this is the invocation name. So this is what you're going to say, Alexa, ask Kodi to blah, blah, blah. Or Alexa, ask my media center to blah, blah, blah. So if you wanted my media center, you would put my media center in there instead of Kodi. And then click save. And then click next. And now we're going to create some custom slot types. So the first one I'm going to create is in capital letters, shows. And this is going to be my TV shows. And what we need to do here is enter the values of all our TV shows. But don't worry, it's been done for you. So one of the things we did when we were in here and we were doing all those different commands, in fact, right at the end there, we were generating all of the TV shows from Kodi. So if we go in here now and find shows, and then we can right click on it and go edit with Notepad++, you can see all the TV shows we've got in Kodi. So I'm going to copy those, and I'm going to paste them into here. And then I'm going to click add. We now need to do that for every type of thing we have in Kodi. So the next one I'm going to do is movies. So I'm going to click add slot type, and then enter type movies. And then right click and go edit with Notepad++, and then copy them all in. Add slot type, movie, genres, edit with Notepad++, copy them in, add. So it's important to add them all. If you don't have any of these things, if you open up the files in your Kodi Alexa master folder and you find that add-ons is empty, for example, just type in anything. So if it's genres, just put in comedy or drama or whatever. Now we need to go back to the Kodi Alexa master folder again, open the speech assets folder, and then edit this again with Notepad++. And you need all of the stuff in here. If you just press your mouse in anywhere here and use Control-A, it will select all, and then Control-C to copy. And this one we want to put in the intent schema field here. So all that stuff from the intent schema has gone in the intent schema file. And we need to just repeat that process right here at the bottom with sample utterances. So if we go back to that folder again, you got sample utterances English, that's what I am. Edit with Notepad++, Control-A, Control-C, and then paste that into there. And click next. Woo! So you can see this disk is still spinning because it's actually still building that stuff. It's let me go on to the next stage, but it hasn't actually finished pulling all that data. So for the endpoint, we're going to choose HTTPS. So where you've got this default box here, you need to enter in this address that we copied earlier on. So I'm going to copy that, stick that in the default endpoint, and we're going to say no to provide geographical region endpoints. I'm going to say no to account linking as well, and then we're going to click next. Pick the middle option. My development endpoint is a subdomain of a domain that has a wildcard, so blah, 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 blah. Next. And then scroll down and hit next again. And now we cross our fingers and test it. Alexa, ask Kodi to play Season 1, Episode 1 of Friends. Woohoo! It's worked! It worked! It worked! It worked! I can't tell you how happy I am. If you are an illegal streaming type person, there is an extra step you'll have to do, and you can go to this video here. I don't condone any of that practice. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of this guy, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to help support my channel, there are links in the description to do that too. I'll see you next time. Kodi skill nonsense, poopy pants. Nonsense.
I'm still learning about mouse questions.
What?
Try asking Tell Me a Mouse Fact to learn more about them.
No one asked you about mice.
How about the song Doing Time? Snoop Time remix by Sublime.
No. No.
Video skills.
No.
Go to the music.
Oh God. Welcome back to the world of home tour.